The guards dragged him across the polished obsidian floor, his knees scraping against stone that had been walked by emperors for 10,000 years. Marcus didn't struggle anymore. 3 months in the breeding pens had taught him that much. Kneel, D. He knelt. Not because the word carried any weight, but because the neural collar around his throat would make him kneel anyway, and at least this way, he kept his dignity of choosing. The throne room of the Vethkai Empire stretched before him like a cathedral to conquest. Bioluminescent pillars pulsed with soft blue light, and somewhere in the shadows he could hear the whispered clicking of mandibles, courtiers, advisors, witnesses to whatever fresh humiliation awaited him. She sat on a throne of grown crystal, 7 feet of chitin and grace, her forearms folded in what he'd learned was contemplation. High Matriarch Siravex, ruler of 37 systems, commander of the fleet that had broken Earth's defense grid in 19 hours. Her compound eyes reflected him 1,000 times over. 1,000 broken humans, kneeling. This is him? Her voice was music played on bones. The one from the officer caste? Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, Matriarch Tarek. The advisor's voice came from his left. Captured during the Battle of Titan Station. Genetic screening shows exceptional markers. Intelligence quotient in the 99th percentile of human metrics. Physical specifications within optimal parameters. He has been prepared. Prepared. Marcus felt the word like a blade between his ribs. 3 months of genetic treatments, hormone optimization, psychological evaluation. They'd fed him better than he'd eaten in years, healed the wounds from the battle, even fixed his eyesight. All to make him a more suitable breeding specimen. Look at me, human. He raised his eyes. Met hers. In the breeding pens, they'd beaten him for less. But something cold and small inside him refused to die, and he held her gaze until she made the clicking sound that passed for laughter among her kind. There it is, Saravex said. That defiance they warned me about. The others, she gestured vaguely, and Marcus tried not to think about what had happened to the other human males in the program. They broke too easily. But you, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, you still have fire. She rose from her throne, and even knowing what she was, even hating everything she represented, Marcus couldn't help but notice the terrible elegance of her movement. The Vethkai were apex predators evolved to rule, and every line of her form announced it. My empire requires an heir, she said, descending the steps toward him. The genetic seers have determined that human DNA, properly integrated, will produce offspring of unprecedented capability. A bridge between our species. A symbol of our eternal dominion over your kind. She stopped before him, close enough that he could smell her. Ozone and something like honey. You will father this heir. It wasn't a question. In the Vethkai Empire, matriarchs did not ask. Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say. The collar would ensure compliance, the treatments would ensure viability, and his feelings on the matter were as relevant as the feelings of any other livestock. But she was watching him with those 1,000-faceted eyes, waiting. And if I refuse? He asked, knowing the answer. You cannot refuse. She said it simply, without cruelty, as one might explain gravity to a child. But I am curious what you think refusal would look like. I could die. I could find a way. Yes. She tilted her head, mandibles clicking softly. Your species does that. We've lost 17 viable males to self-termination. It's inefficient. She circled him slowly, and he felt her gaze like cold fingers on his skin. But you won't. You're not the type. You don't know anything about me. I know you survived when your ship was boarded. I know you fought until your weapon melted in your hands. I know you shielded 3 wounded crew members with your body, and that when we finally captured you, you were still trying to reach the emergency beacon. She paused behind him. You are a survivor, Marcus Webb. You will not choose death while any possibility of life remains. He hated her for being right. Take him to the consort quarters, she ordered. He will be treated according to his new station. I will visit when my schedule permits. The guards hauled him up, but her voice stopped them at the door. One more thing, human. He didn't turn. The last 3 candidates fought this arrangement with everything they had. Sabotage, hunger, strikes. One even attempted to assassinate me. Her voice carried something that might have been amusement. They failed, and they suffered for it. But you? She paused. I wonder if you'll try something different. Something clever. The doors closed behind him, and Marcus was led through corridors of carved bone to his gilded cage. That night, lying on sheets softer than anything he'd touched since Earth, staring at a ceiling painted with conquests, he began to plan. Not escape. Not assassination. Not suicide. Something different. Something clever. The consort quarters were a prison designed by someone who had studied human psychology from the outside and gotten everything slightly wrong. There were books, but all in Vethkai script. There were windows, but they showed only the void between stars. There were servants, but they never spoke, and their compound eyes tracked his every movement. She visited on the 3rd day. You haven't eaten. Siravek stood in the doorway, 4 arms clasped behind her back. Without the throne, without the courtiers, she seemed almost smaller. The physicians are concerned. I'm not hungry. The treatments require caloric intake. You're damaging the timeline. Then use the collar. She went still. It was strange, seeing something so alien pause in consideration. Then she crossed to the window and stood looking out at the stars. Is that what you think we are? Animals that solve every problem with force? You conquered my planet in 19 hours. You put a collar on my neck and dragged me here to breathe. What would you call it? Efficiency. She turned, and the starlight caught her chitin, making her glow like a ghost. The Vethkai do not enjoy cruelty, Marcus Webb. We simply do not let sentiment interfere with necessity. Your species would have been a threat in 3 generations. We have seen it before. Better to integrate than to exterminate. How merciful. Yes. She said it without irony. It is. The Kelvrath were exterminated. The Cenari were sterilized. Your kind are merely repurposed. Your cultures preserved in archives, your populations maintained in sustainable numbers, your genetic material used to breed better conquerors. She made that clicking sound again. Laughter, he realized. She was laughing at him. You say that as if your species didn't do the same. Your empire builders, your colonizers, your genetic programs. We've studied your history. The only difference between us is scale. He wanted to argue. To defend humanity's honor, its capacity for goodness, its what? Its wars, its genocides, its own breeding programs and slavery and conquest. We were trying to be better, he said finally. Were you succeeding? The silence stretched between them. She moved to the table where the untouched food sat and examined it with apparent interest. This is all wrong, she murmured. They've given you protein preparations. Nutrient efficient, but, she paused, mandibles clicking in what he was beginning to recognize as thought. Your species has emotional attachments to food consumption. Flavor, texture, ritual. It's called enjoying a meal. Yes, that. She summoned a servant with a gesture. Remove this. Bring something from the human archive. Something with, she looked at him. What do you prefer? He stared at her. Are you asking what food I want? You need to eat. You won't eat this. Logic suggests I should provide something you will eat. So yes, I am asking what food you want. For a long moment Marcus didn't answer. This wasn't in any of his plans. He'd expected cruelty, brutality, the cold efficiency she'd described. He hadn't expected her to ask about his preferences. My mother used to make pasta, he said slowly, testing. Carbonara, with real eggs before the rationing. It's probably not in your archive. We captured 3 Italian generation ships. I assure you it is. She gave the order to the servant in rapid Vethkai, and it scurried away. You will eat. Then we will discuss the procedure. There's nothing to discuss. You'll do what you're going to do. Yes. She settled into a chair across from him, folding her legs beneath her in a way that seemed almost informal. But I find that outcomes improve when the participants understand the process. Your species has strong psychological connections to reproduction. Confusion and fear produce stress hormones that impact viability. So you're explaining things to me because it'll make your breeding program more successful. Yes. Not because you care about my feelings. She tilted her head. Should I pretend otherwise? Would that comfort you? No. And strangely, he meant it. He'd had enough of comfortable lies in his life. Just tell me what's going to happen. So she did. The genetic merging process, the artificial gestation, his role in providing samples, and later, in the psychological bonding protocols that Vethkai used to imprint their young. She explained it with the same clinical detachment a doctor might use, and Marcus listened and tried to feel nothing. The food came. It wasn't quite right. The noodles were slightly too firm, the sauce missing something he couldn't name, but it was closer to human food than anything he'd tasted in months. He ate, and she watched, and neither of them spoke. When he finished, she rose to leave. I don't understand you, he said. She paused at the door. What don't you understand? You conquered my world. You killed millions of my people. You're using me like... He gestured at himself, at the room, at everything. But you ask what food I want. You explain things. He struggled for words. You act like I'm a person. You are a person. Not to your empire. To your empire, I'm livestock. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, the empire is not wrong. You are livestock by our law and custom. Property of the throne. A resource to be used. She turned to face him fully. But I am not only the empire, I am also myself, and I have found in my centuries of rule that even livestock are individuals, that cruelty serves no purpose beyond the cruelty itself, and that, she paused, mandibles working silently. I am tired, Marcus Webb. I am tired of cruelty. She left before he could respond. That night, for the first time since his capture, Marcus dreamed of something other than death. He dreamed of her standing at the window, wrapped in starlight, asking him about pasta. Weeks passed. The samples were taken, the process begun, and Marcus found himself in the strange position of waiting for a child he would never be allowed to raise. She visited more frequently than duty required. At first, he told himself it was monitoring, quality control, the same efficiency she applied to everything. But the conversations grew longer. She asked about Earth, about his life before the war, about human customs and beliefs. He answered, partly because the collar made defiance exhausting, and partly because he was lonely. Because she was the only one who talked to him like a person. Because somewhere in those compound eyes, he'd started to see something that looked like curiosity. Tell me about your family, she said one evening, seated across from him, as had become their habit. They're dead. The bombardment took out most of New Chicago in the first wave. I know. I authorized that bombardment. She said it without flinching. I'm asking you to tell me about them anyway. He should have felt rage. He'd felt rage before, when he'd first learned. But rage was exhausting, and she was sitting there asking, and my mother was a teacher. Literature. She used to say that stories were how humans made sense of suffering. He stared at his hands. My father was an engineer. Quiet, diet. He showed love by fixing things. If you were sad, He'd repair something in your room and never mention it. And you became a soldier. I became a soldier because there was a war. Before that, I was a pianist. She went still, in that way she had. You made music? I made music. Will you show me? There was a piano in the archive. Of course there was. The Vethkai collected everything. They brought it to his quarters, and Marcus sat before it for a long time, just touching the keys, feeling something crack open in his chest. He played Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat major, music for a dead world, played in the heart of the empire that killed it. When he finished, his face was wet, and Cyravex was standing by the window with her back to him. In all our studies of your species, she said quietly, we never understood music. We have mathematics, patterns, harmonics. But this, she turned, and something in her posture had changed. This is different. This is grief, made sound. Yes, well, you grieve for your world, your family, your life. Yes, and yet you just created something beautiful. She crossed to him slowly. How do you do that? How do you take pain and make it into this? I don't know. It's what humans do. She reached out, and for a terrible moment he thought she would touch him. But her hands stopped inches from his face. The heir will be born in 3 cycles, she said. The council expects me to dispose of you afterward. Breeding stock is not retained once its purpose is served. I know. I have told them I will keep you. She made a sound of frustration. There is no word in your language. A personal consultant. A companion without status. A pet. Yes. She didn't look away. It is the only protection I can offer within the system. If you were anything else, they would demand your termination. So I go from livestock to pet. That's the best-case scenario. Yes. He laughed. It surprised them both. You're asking my permission. I am informing you of the situation. Permission is meaningless. I know. But you're asking anyway. She said nothing. Why? He pressed. Why do you care? I'm livestock. Property. You've said it yourself. Because, she stopped. Her mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign he'd learned meant distress. Because you played music for me. Because you told me about your father fixing things. Because you eat the pasta and sometimes you almost smile and, she turned away sharply. Because I am tired, Marcus Webb. I have ruled for 200 years. I have conquered and integrated and optimized, and I am tired. And you are the first person in decades who has made me feel anything other than tired. The room was very quiet. That's not my responsibility, he said carefully. I didn't ask to make you feel things. I didn't ask to be here at all. I know. You're still my captor. The collar is still on my neck. Your empire still holds my people in chains. I know. If you feel something, that's your problem. It doesn't make this okay. It doesn't make you good. I know. Her voice was barely audible. I am not good. I have never been good. I have only ever been necessary. He should have stayed silent. Should have let her suffer with it, the way he suffered, the way everyone she'd conquered suffered. But he thought of his father, fixing things in silence. Of his mother, saying that stories were how humans made sense of suffering. Of all the rage he'd felt, and how it had never brought anyone back, never changed anything, never done anything but burn. My mother had a saying, he said. Being good isn't something you are. It's something you keep choosing. She turned back to him. You've made terrible choices. Monstrous choices. Choices that killed millions, including people I love. He met her eyes, all 1,000 of them. But you're not dead yet. Neither am I, and tomorrow you could choose differently. The system is made of choices. Every law someone wrote, every order someone followed, Every atrocity someone committed because it was efficient. Choices, all the way down. You make it sound simple. It's the hardest thing there is. That's why most people don't do it. She stood there, alien and terrible and lost, and Marcus realized with horror that he didn't hate her anymore. He should hate her. He had every right to hate her. But somewhere in the music and the pasta and the endless conversations, he'd started to see her as a person. A monstrous person. A person who had done unforgivable things. But a person nonetheless. "Play it again," she said. "Please." He played until his fingers ached, and she stood at the window crying tears she didn't know she had. The air was born on a day of solar storms. Marcus was there, not by right, but by SCI-FI's insistence, another small rebellion against tradition. He stood behind a screen of privacy, watching through the shimmer as the artificial gestation pod opened, and a creature that was neither human nor Vethkai took its first breath. She had human eyes. Blue, like his mother's. They looked up at the ceiling, at the world, at everything, with an expression of absolute wonder. "She's perfect," SCI-FI breathed. The council had argued for months. The integration was too complete. The child looked too human, thought too human, might sympathize too much with the integrated species. She was a liability. She was a mistake. She was an abomination. SCI-FI had overruled them all. "She is the future," she had said. "The future is supposed to be different from the past." Now, watching the medical attendants swarm around the child, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt since Earth fell. Hope. Hope. It was dangerous, that feeling. It had no business being here, in the heart of the Empire, in the chest of a man who was still property. But there it was, stubborn and unreasonable, blooming in the dark. "You may approach." He stepped around the screen. The child, his child, though the word felt strange and incomplete, was wrapped in thermal cloth, her tiny fingers grasping at air. She had 4 arms like her mother, but her skin was soft and brown like his. "Hold her." "I don't know how." "Neither do I." SCI-FI made the clicking sound that was her laugh. "We'll learn together." He took the child. She weighed almost nothing. She looked up at him with those blue eyes, and he saw the future looking back. "What will you name her?" he asked. "Vethkai heirs are named by prophecy. The seers will determine. What will you name her?" She was silent for a long moment. Then, "I thought perhaps you might have a suggestion." It was such a small thing. A name. But in that small thing was everything. An acknowledgement that this child was his too, that his heritage mattered, that he was more than a biological resource. "Maya," he said. "My mother's name was Maya, Maya. SCI-FI tested the word. "It sounds like a beginning. It means illusion or compassion, depending on which tradition you follow. Illusion and compassion." Her mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Perhaps you'll need both." The years that followed were complicated. Marcus remained officially a consort, property of the throne. The collar stayed on his neck, though the control functions were quietly disabled. When he walked through the palace, guards still watched him. When he spoke in council, which SCI-FI increasingly asked him to do, half the advisors refused to acknowledge his words. But Maya grew. She learned to walk in the low gravity of the palace and to run in the higher gravity of the training grounds. She learned Vethkai history from tutors and human history from Marcus. She learned to fight and to reason and to question. That last one got her in trouble. "Father," she asked at age 7, "why do we keep slaves?" He was playing piano, Debussy this time, the slow movement of Clair de Lune. He didn't stop. "What makes you ask? I met a human girl in the servant quarters. She's my age. She said her parents were integrated from Earth. She said her grandmother remembered the sky being blue." Maya climbed onto the bench beside him. She cried when she said it. Why do we make people cry? It's a complicated question. Mother says that when I say complicated, she means she doesn't want to answer. He did stop playing then. She was looking at him with those blue eyes, his mother's eyes, in an alien face, waiting for the truth. Your mother rules an empire, he said carefully. That empire was built on conquest, on taking what others had, he searched for words a child might understand, on deciding that some people were less important than others. But that's wrong. Yes. So why don't we stop? Because stopping is hard. Because the people who benefit from the system don't want to change it. Because even your mother, who is the most powerful person in 37 systems, can't just decide to make things different. Why not? Because power doesn't work that way. If she freed all the slaves tomorrow, the council would overthrow her. The military would rebel. The empire would collapse into war, and millions more would die. He put his hand over hers. Sometimes the best you can do is make things a little better, a little at a time, and hope the future is kinder than the past. That's sad. Yes, I don't want to be sad. She looked at the piano keys. Will you teach me to play? Mother says humans make beautiful things out of sadness. Maybe I can learn. He taught her. And in the music, in the space between notes, something grew. On the 10th anniversary of Maya's birth, SCI-FI called Marcus to her private chambers. They were different now, these meetings. She sat, not on a throne but on a simple chair, and he sat across from her, and the space between them was full of a decade of conversations. She had removed her formal regalia. Without the crown of office, she looked almost fragile. I have made a decision, she said. Another one. Do not mock. This one cost me. She reached into her robes and withdrew a small device. Do you know what this is? He did. He'd worn one for 10 years. A collar control key, yes. She set it on the table between them. The system requires collars on all integrated humans. It does not specify that the collars must be active. She pushed the key toward him. I cannot free you. Not legally, not publicly. But I can do this. He didn't touch it. Why now? Because Maya asked me yesterday why her father wears a slave collar. Because I had no answer that didn't make me a monster in her eyes. She looked away. Because you were right. About choices, about what we are being, what we decide to be. And I am tired of deciding to be someone my daughter is ashamed of. She's not ashamed of you. She will be. When she's old enough to understand what I've done. What I am. Her voice cracked. I cannot undo the bombardments. I cannot resurrect New Chicago. I cannot give you back your world or your family or any of the things I took. But I can give you this. A key that says you are not property. Even if the system still calls you one. He picked up the key. It was warm from her hands. You know this doesn't fix anything. I know. You're still a conqueror. Still an oppressor. Still the person who killed everyone I loved. I know. And I still... He stopped. Started again. I still don't hate you anymore. And I don't know what to do with that. Neither do I. They sat in silence for a long time. The stars wheeled past the window, indifferent to empires, to conquests, to two people trying to find a way through the wreckage of history. Maya wants to change things, Marcus said finally. When she rules, she talks about it constantly. Integration reform, cultural preservation, expanding rights. She thinks she can fix the system from the inside. She is young. She's determined. And she's half human. He almost smiled. We're very stubborn. I have noticed. She'll need help. Advisors who understand both sides. Who can navigate between her Vethkai heritage and her human one. He met her eyes. She'll need her father. Yes. And her mother. SCI-FI went very still. You could step back, he continued. Not abdicate. That would cause chaos. But begin transitioning power. training her. Let her make changes while you still have enough authority to protect her from the council. You've been thinking about this. I've had 10 years. It would mean the end of my reign. It would mean the beginning of hers. She rose and walked to the window. The starlight caught her chitin, and for a moment, she looked like she had that first night. Terrible and beautiful and impossibly distant. I have ruled for 210 years, she said. I have conquered 37 systems. I have overseen the integration of 12 species. I have built an empire that will last millennia. She turned, and the only thing I am proud of is a half-human child who thinks slavery is wrong. That's a start. It's not enough. No, it never will be. But it's a start. She came back to the table, sat across from him, reached out, and for the first time in 10 years touched him. Her hand on his, cool and strange and careful. I do not love you, she said. I do not think I am capable of love as your species understands it. But she paused. I am glad you did not die. I am glad you played music instead of fighting. I am glad you are here. Is that supposed to be an apology? It is supposed to be the truth. He looked at her hand on his, at the key lying between them, at the window full of stars. I don't forgive you, he said. I can't. Too many dead, too much lost. I don't think forgiveness is even the right word for something like this. I know. But I'm here. I'm alive. Our daughter is going to try to build something better. He turned his hand over, let their fingers interlock. And I think that's what my mother meant. About stories making sense of suffering. Not fixing it. Not forgetting it. Just finding a way to go on. Finding something worth going on for. Maya Iweza. And the humans she might help. And the empire she might change. And, he hesitated. And you. Whatever you are. Whatever we are. I do not know what we are. Neither do I, but we have time to figure it out. She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to empires, to history, to two people sitting together in the dark. But in the silence between them, something new was growing. Not forgiveness, not love, not any of the easy things. Just two people, choosing to be better than they were. Choosing each other, despite everything. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was a start.
Buen reloj. Una mate.
Hace como 200 carros.
Verdad, te pasas de verga también, güey. Mira, están brillantes.
No te enamores, esas no son cosas de Dios. Ir a ver famosos.
Va a haber muchos así como, no streamers, pero así como youtubers y la chingada, güey. Matador. Pero por el momento no he visto cosplayers. Es que esos güeyes sí pagan por el estacionamiento. Nosotros no vamos a pagar por el estacionamiento. Me vale verga. No quiero pagar por el estacionamiento, güey. Déjale una mordida a esta madre, güey. Tu sexo sabe a Dios. Pinche hamburguesa bien básica, pero God. Una hamburguesa de Burger King nunca falla, güey.
¿Cómo se llama el lugar donde pasará el concierto? Qué rico muerde.
Espérame. Verga. Pinche tela culero. Se llama Las Vegas.
UFFS Aston Martin.
Las Vegas Festival Ground se llama. ¿Qué me hueles, güey? ¿Qué me hueles?
Ojalá así me mordieras a mí.
¿Cómo? Las Vegas Festival Grounds, pero no son.
Ya regresé, ya estamos a punto de llegar.
Ya me llegó.
Buenas naves ahí.
Sí, hay muchas, No, se me cayó una papa. Esto no lo hagan, No manejen mientras coman.
No vayas a ensuciar tu mandil.
Si me digas. Pues veo lo ensucié. Ah, no, es hoy, cabrón. ¿Hoy qué es? No, es mañana es 25, güey. No mames, eso significa que no va a estacionamiento en el Circus, mamón.
Ponle los tater tots a la hamburguesa.
Eso fue lo que hice. Te lo aventé. Creo que es un festival de rock, güey, no sé.
Que comamos mientras conducimos.
No.
Está rico.
Sí, está muy buena la hamburguesa. La neta hubiera preferido la comida china, pero pues que vamos a prisas ya. Bueno, no te creas, güey, abren a las 12, sí, cierto. Ahora que lo recuerdo, abren a las 12, cabrón. Si nos llevamos bien con los cosplayers, güey, a toda madre, güey. Porque no tengo muchos conocidos aquí que les gusta.
Va a estar bueno.
Bueno, no tengo nadie que le guste así como tener cosplay y la verga, güey. La neta no. Ahorita le doy otra mordida, güey. No me huelas, güey. Ok, vamos a estacionarnos aquí en el Circus, güey. Aquí, Circus.
Sí, ya vi que va a estar System of a Down y Korn. Invíteme.
¿Eso es mañana o es hoy?
Que comamos, hablemos por teléfono y bebamos cerveza mientras conducimos, dices.
No, la cerveza no, mejor marihuana. A la verga, $50 para estacionarte.
Va a ser mañana, papu.
Ah, entonces ahorita nomás están recogiendo boletos. Creo. ¿Y por qué me dices papu? Ay.
¿Por qué eres papu, papu?
¿Por qué se escucha así la bocina? Ay, güey, recen de que haya estacionamiento. Aquí nunca cobran estacionamientos así. Ah, sí eran verdes.
Tú en el Circus Hill.
Nah, digas mamadas, güey. Vámonos directo al pinche a la convención, güey. ¿Cuál pinche circo? No. Deja tu, güey, lo del short, güey. Es lo que me da más vergüenza cuando me lo quite el pinche traje. Eso va a ser más el problema. Ay, deja conecto también el iPhone de una vez, sí es cierto, güey. No me acordaba, cabrón.
Va a estar hasta el QLO de lleno.
Sí. Ya sé. Y está lleno aquí ahorita, o sea. Vamos a ponernos...
Te vas a quitar el core entonces. KERICO.
¿El short? No. Carnal, ábrete la verga.
Ya quiero ver los cosplays.
Yo también.
Ingatu la police.
Esos güeyes me la pelan. No, podemos poner aquí, güey.